Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cat's Track. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and sharing this with your friends. Today's episode is with our friend Brad Thompson. Brad was born in Edmonton, Alberta, in the old University Hospital. He tells me that his greatest accomplishments in life were marrying his amazing wife and having their daughter together. Besides his loved ones, Brad is passionate about his work. He lives and breathes biotech, and you'll see that soon. And he tells me that that's his hobby. It's no surprise when you see him. Friend, you'll find his full bio attached. Brad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. Are you ready for the questions?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So depends how you look at it. What's your greatest challenge in the last few months?
Like many other people, the COVID thing has intruded, and it kind of doubly intrudes because it's part of what we're doing. A couple of the companies that we've set up in the last 4 years have COVID projects. One is doing it's not a vaccine, and I mean that's one of my pet peeves is that most of what people are doing aren't vaccines, but people are calling them vaccines. But one of them's doing similar to the ones that Moderna and Eli Lilly are doing. But the other one is on a very different mechanism of action. But just getting the work done, we usually do our work in university labs, most of the universities have been shutting down research and doing all sorts of strange stuff. We're doing most of our work at the University of Guelph, and basically, if you weren't doing COVID work, they shut the labs down. And fortunately for us, our labs were doing COVID work. And under the guise of doing COVID work, they were doing lots of other things for me too, because we're doing lots of gene therapy work. Everything that we're doing and all the companies that we've invested in the last 4 years is gene therapy based. We're doing cancer work and infectious disease and anything that's basically immune dysfunction. So arthritis and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And but that's Guelph. Guelph has been working great. Now, U of A in Edmonton, they kept all the labs open, but they would only let one person in at a time. So they were running 24 hours a day and people standing in the hallway waiting for the other person to do their stuff. Didn't work out so well.
No.
And some universities just shut down completely.
Oh my gosh.
So you have all these graduate students whose degrees have been interrupted and. So just from a mechanical perspective, us doing our work to try to help out with COVID has been interrupted by COVID. And so that's been difficult. The other difficult thing is just watching the government responses to COVID and just shaking your head, because it's just, there's two things you look out for from a public health perspective for infectious disease. My Ph.D. is in infectious disease, so I get to pontificate about this.
Yes, you do.
And, when there's really only two questions you ask when you hear that there's a respiratory infection. You ask what virus it is. And the Chinese were kind enough to tell us that at the end of January. It's a coronavirus. We know a lot about coronaviruses. MERS, which is the one in the Middle East, SARS, the first SARS, because this is SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV-1 was a coronavirus, and just under half of seasonal colds and flus are coronaviruses. We know a lot about coronavirus. So we knew it was coronavirus. That's the first question to answer. The second is, what are the patients at risk? And again, the Chinese did daily updates of the entire profile, all the patients they had in thing. People have criticized China about being open. I'm like, how could they be more open? They sat on it for a couple of weeks. Which government in the planet wouldn't have sat on it for a couple of weeks? Be fair.
Yeah.
So we had all that, but that was at the end of January. So we knew what the patients at risk were. So if you have comorbidities, that's really your risk. And age is kind of a wild card, because most people my age and older have a morbidity of some kind. Mine's lungs. I've got crappy lungs and have my whole life. And they, but the CDC numbers as of yesterday were that 93% of people who died have a comorbidity.
Yeah.
And you could argue that they would have died anyway. maybe not this month or last month or the month after, but COVID just kind of hurried it up badly, which is, as on an individual basis, horrible. But we knew all that at the end of January. And how you deal with those things is if you get an infection, an active infection, and 80% of them are asymptomatic, so you don't worry about them. You take the 20% symptomatic and you quarantine them. That's every infectious disease that we've had for the last 1,000 years. That's how you handle it. And if you're a patient at risk, you isolate from yourself, or you isolate yourself from the infection. That's all we needed to do, and we knew that information at the end of January. Unfortunately, I know probably 40 or 50 people who know like 20 times as much as I do about actually transmitting diseases, infectious diseases around the world. Not a single one of them was ever asked their opinion by a government, wherever they were. EU, North, South America, China, Japan, Canada, the US.
Wow.
Not one of them. And so that huge reservoir of expertise was never tapped into. And to me, that's a failure. I mean, we could have dealt with this, well, it's finally an epidemic in the US. It's still not a pandemic level in the US. And I mean, that's another pet peeve of mine, but it's an outbreak everywhere else. And it's just become an epidemic in the US because it hit 3% of the population. But the information was there to deal with it in a way that wouldn't have disrupted our economy hardly at all. And all those millions of people who have lost their livelihoods, their jobs, their lives, the increased suicides, the overdose deaths, the people dying of cancer because they weren't diagnosed because the healthcare system was too busy waiting for COVID. In fact, all that was avoidable. And I find that very disturbing, And it was just because they didn't bother to go out and ask the people who actually had expertise in the area. Because
that's
they didn't.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I find it so frustrating as well, Brad. I'm so glad you brought all this up. Most recently, in the last week, many of my friends have told me that they've either been positive tested or they've got friends that are or family that are super close to them that are positive tested. So my responses to them have been, wow, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Or wow, I'm so sorry. Are your friends and family are okay? They're all coming back to me saying, yeah, I was tested positive, but I'm feeling fine. So that's affecting the COVID numbers. That's affecting the decisions on what is locking down our economy. And it's driving me crazy.
I mean, they've attributed 500 deaths in Alberta, more or less, to COVID. And over 90% of those deaths are people with comorbidities. So arguably, there's only 50 incremental deaths only. If you had one of those 50, it's not only. I mean, you have to always remember each one of these deaths is a loss. It's awful. On a human basis, on a family basis, it doesn't matter if a billion other people die or not. If you die, you died.
That's right.
But there's arguably only 50 people incrementally that would have died from COVID in the province of Alberta with 4+ million people. Alberta has about 32 or 33,000 deaths a year from all causes. Every year, day in, day out. Has 1,000 deaths a year in our hospitals from hospital-acquired infections, year in, year out. And you've got 50 incremental horrible deaths, but only 50 incremental deaths due to this. Somebody actually published a paper today. It's having a big splash in the States about taking a look at the CDC numbers. And there's actually, when you look at the deaths attributable to COVID, and then you look at the deaths attributable to all the comorbidities, all the comorbidities are down. So people are attributing those deaths to COVID, possibly rightfully so. And so they figure the incremental deaths are 25,000 this year in the States. The US has 4 million people die every year in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on an individual basis, I think we have to do everything we can reasonably to deal with these infections. But our healthcare system is a triage system anyway. There is no such thing as zero. I mean, if you have a heart condition in Alberta, they wait till it gets really bad before they do anything about it because they just don't have the bandwidth to deal with you.
For sure.
My father-in-law had that problem. He wasn't sick enough, so they had to wait for him to get sick enough before they would operate on him. And,
Yeah.
you know, and. I mean, it's always like that. It's always been like that my entire life. And, you know, so we should be triaging COVID too, and dealing with it in a way that reduces infections appropriately. And we could do all that and still not, you know, bankrupt every second person.
Agreed.
And take, I mean, the GDP debt load in Canada, it's gone up 80% of GDP in 1 year. When
Crazy.
you take provincial and federal levels, it's like 4 times higher than the next country on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, Canada is just a huge outlier. And it's just like, why? You know, we're indebting our great grandchildren. We're going to destroy our currency. I mean, we're going to have problems down the road because of this.
100%.
You know, all unnecessary. I'm just
100%. I agree with you 100%. I agree. I'm so with you. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
I get really worked up about this, obviously. But,
I do too, my friend.
But, you know, biotech, I mean, get back to the biotech thing. I mean, this year has really, I think, shown the strength of the stuff that, you know, I've been working on my whole life. I mean, I did my first gene transfer-y thing back in the early 70s. So we're almost 50 years ago.
Amazing.
And the technology then compared to what we do have now is like embarrassing primitive. It's like talking about before fire and after fire. It's awful. I have an investment banker friend who's been in banking longer than anybody I know. And he just said he did the IPO for fire, and that puts it in context. I mean, he was doing banking before I was born. I mean, how's that possible? And the nicest man on planet Earth too. He's not your stereotypical investment banker. Literally, he would do anything for anybody. He's just just the best guy. But you compare that technology to what we can do now, and you know. Some of this, but it's all come to fruition with the speed at which we've been able to do, especially the first two. I mean, the first two, the Moderna one and Eli Lilly's, aren't vaccines. They're immunoprophylaxis. And what they do is they're actually just programming all the cells in your body to crank out an antibody against the COVID virus. And so what they do is they take a little piece of messenger RNA, which codes for the antibody, and they put it in a cell in your body, and your body makes the antibody against the virus. And it's been 300 days or less since this started happening, and we're already have emergency designations on these new therapeutics. Unheard of.
Wow.
Unheard of. Yeah. And it's just because of the strength of the technology. But you can do that with any medical condition that you have an understanding of the target that you're looking at in the cells. I mean, we've been up and down regulating, like increasing or decreasing pretty much anything that's in your body. And so we can fix most immune diseases if you choose to. And we're about actually to start our first clinical study in the States with rheumatoid arthritis doing that. Cancer, we've got the targets. We know what the markers are up and down. All the existing drugs that are out there that are biologics, we can make your body make them instead of you having to get injected with them.
Good.
I mean, it's amazing what this technology can do, but it's just having it out front with a pandemic worldwide that's caused so much thing is really remarkable. And it's showing up in the market caps too. I mean, Moderna's market cap this morning broke through $50 billion. This is really all they have. And I mean, if you're in this area and you're public, you've been benefiting it from a stock perspective. So it's exciting. It's exciting to see something you've been working on your whole life finally kind of demonstrate the strength of the technology that underlies it all. It's neat. So.
I love it, Brad. I'm so grateful for your service to us all, and all of the research and work that you've done has made a major impact, and I know it will continue. If you're looking for a guinea pig, I've got rheumatoid, so.
Yeah, well, you can tell what diseases are in my family by what diseases I work on. So,
that's so nice.
We've got Crohn's and IBD. So I've got a clinical candidate for that we'll be doing with gene therapy. And RA, I've got a clinical candidate for that. And now, and the RA is actually kind of neat because we know there's parts of your immune system that there's too much of, and like tumor necrosis factor, TNF. So all these TNF drugs that are out there, and there's so many of them, it's kind of hard to, like Remicade and that whole family of things.
Yeah.
And then there's also a deficiency in certain things that they're called checkpoint molecules that actually prevent your immune system from recognizing you as being foreign, which is really what all the arthritises are. Is that basically your immune system is going, oh, that doesn't belong here, and it's your cartilage or your bone, and it's bad. It's muscle sometimes. And so what we're doing is we're with gene therapy, we're down regulating the TNF to normal levels and up regulating, in this case, CTLA4 to the regular levels in the same vector, one gene vector, and you'll get one injection in your muscle a year. So no more IV every 3 to 6 weeks or whatever your thing is, like, just it and it took us 6 weeks to come up with the vector.
Wow.
Like, oh, yeah, sure. We just finished animal toxicology on this particular vector that we're using. There's nothing. It's completely clean, and it makes me smile because you're just like, I can do something about these things. Yeah, but cancer. I mean, everybody in my family gets cancer. I mean, including me. I mean, my first skin cancer was melanoma, which is not a good place to start with skin cancer, and I've had 17 different types of skin cancer since then.
Wow.
But that's springtime in Alberta when you go out and fry yourself on the May long weekend when you're a child every year. And then live with people who smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day. There you go.
That's right.
All the risk factors, it's just scary. But yeah, misspent youth kind of thing. At my age, again, I mean, I could go and fry myself in the sun and it would increase my cancer risk. But I've got that leftover genetic damage from a child. And every 18 months or so, something new pops up. The last one was I had what they thought was a little tiny thing in here, and they went in and they were just going to do a Mohs surgery on it, and they kept having to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and then he had to drill into the bone in my face. And
whoa!
He's like, do you really want to do this without being out cold? And I'm like, just finish it, please.
I get it done now.
They took out a piece of skin this big on my face and stretched, so I have a partial facelift on the left side.
Whoa!
Because he's good at what he does, but it was, and then I had to get on a plane 3 days later with this face thing,
Brutal.
but that's just because of childhood sun exposure.
Yeah.
Period. If I hadn't have done that, like literally burned to tan, it was an expression. I mean, we all had it, right? And so yes, I've spent half my life doing infectious diseases and half my life doing cancer and immune diseases, and it's all because I can point to somebody in my family or somebody I know now that has them, and that's personal. And you see that in biotech companies.
Sure.
You see companies that are doing pancreatic cancer, and they need to find out that somebody's uncle, dad, cousin, daughter, wife had pancreatic cancer. We had one investor in my previous company who invested like $30-some million in our company because his dad had died of pancreatic cancer.
Oh.
He didn't have a clue about what we were doing, but we were working on pancreatic cancer. So he invested in us. And it's very common. I mean, you don't see that in oil companies. I mean, who gets, fossil carbon? I started working for Nova Husky. So that was my first job out of school.
Wow.
Heavy oil. And but fossil carbon is fossil carbon. I mean, it's who gets emotionally involved with fossil carbon, except in a negative way these days. But I'm just like, but biotech, it's all health, it's people.
Yeah.
And you see these people working on rare diseases on small children, and like they just came out with, I always forget the name of that disease where the kids age prematurely.
Oh yeah.
They just actually got the first product approved for lifespan extension in those kids. I mean, it adds about a year. It's amazing because if they can do it a year, in a decade, we'll be doing 20 years. And I mean, it's like with CF. I mean, when I was a teenager, a long time ago, the life expectancy for a CF patient was 15.
That's right.
And now it's 60.
Wow.
And it's all been done incrementally. And
I love it.
It's amazing. I mean, I had friends die when I was a teenager of cystic fibrosis. No teenager alive today has to worry about that.
No, that's right. Yeah.
And most of that was due to biotech too. All the real big jumps were biotech. So
yeah. Very cool. I love how you're so excited about it too. That's awesome. Any three things or two or three things you want to share, or what would you like to share with the audience today, Brad?
Just that the first of all, with respect to COVID, the end is near. If assuming our regional governments get out of the way and allow us to actually get access to the therapies and vaccines that are coming down the tube, the end is near. We're going to be done with this soon. And yes, we'll have to live with the fallout, but at least we won't have to run around, not being able to see our children because they're not in our bubble or whatever goofy thing they come up with. So that's one. Two is that I think that and I used to say in my grandchildren's lifetime, but I get to say in my lifetime now. I think in my lifetime, we are going to more or less turn cancer, infectious disease, and most autoimmune diseases into manageable conditions rather than death sentences.
So good.
And I can't believe I get to say that out loud. and third, I'm looking forward to spending more of my time in warmer places than I am right now. Which is
I'm with you.
As I get older, I love winter, but there's winters in San Diego aren't like winters here.
No.
I think San Diego has the best climate in North America. I mean, it's temperate all year round, right?
I lived there when I was 18 years old for a few months. I really loved it.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah.
I love that part of the States. A good part of my family's in the U.S. Part of them came to the U.S., came to Canada, then went back to the U.S. I mean, kind of standard back and forth across the border story. Yeah. And so, like many Canadians, I have an affinity for the U.S. That's family affinity, and of course they all went to nicer places, and when you Skype or Zoom with them when it's 45 below out or wherever you're suffering in there, the air conditioning's not working today. I'm not dying here. And rude hand gesture, which I can't do on this tape, comes up. So.
I'm with you. I want warmer temperatures too. We're looking at the Caribbean. In fact, I'm starting another podcast that's going to be what's cool in the Caribbean. And it's going to include all the tech, AI, machine learning, how they're removing barriers to start open businesses like within 6 weeks. They've got a whole different structure of how to get things done down there.
Well, and they're loose, and they're encouraging again because of the COVID. They're giving people longer duration temporary work visas, like handing them out like candy. So if you want to go down there and start up a tech company, you can go this afternoon, sort of thing. Yeah. A couple of companies I've been involved with have had Barbadian subsidiaries for obvious reasons, and but I remember the first time I went down there, I wore a suit, and it was 38 above out, 100% humidity, and I soaked through my tie. And halfway through the meeting, the guys were like, "Brad, go back to the hotel and come back in some shorts and a t-shirt." Just
hilarious.
So I walked down the street dripping like a suit, soaked through.
Yeah.
And then I had to, how am I going to get this clean? I can't take it home like this. It was like
hilarious.
But the hotel was used to that. They just laughed at me and said, "Don't worry, sir. We're used to cleaning wet suits."
I love it. That's awesome. Oh my God.
I'd love to have that problem today.
I'm with you.
Which part of the Caribbean?
We are going to look at Cayman in terms of living there, but in terms of the podcast, I'm speaking to many different leaders down there, leaders of chambers of commerce. There's American Chamber. I'm a fellow Rotarian, so I'm speaking to Rotary clubs and just trying to get a lay of the land of, and the Enterprise City. I'm sure you've heard of that. So a few of those folks. So if you've got leaders down there as well that want to showcase all the cool things that are happening for them and whatever they're building, I'd love to get them on the show as well.
Okay, I will. I'll reach out to a few people that I still keep in contact with down there. There's once a Bayesian, always a Bayesian from a business perspective. So you never lose it. And of course, you never lose the love of Caribbean hot sauces too. So
I'm with you. I'm a condiment queen when it comes to hot sauce.
Yeah, me too. how many different types of jalapeno sauce? Well, they all taste different. People look at you
They
like,
do.
they have flavor? Yes.
Yes, they do.
It's not just heat. It's like, how
Oh,
can
I
you be
love
so
it.
silly? Of course they have different flavors, different, different jalapenos grown in different places have different
That's
flavors.
right.
Like different wheat
People
in
just
different
don't
places
understand
is
us.
for baking or not,
That's right.
People get that, but
Exactly.
I put hot sauce on everything. Like,
Oh my
literally.
gosh, did you ever see the Frank's Red Hot advertisement with a really old lady older than me that is using it, and there's this young person looking at her going, whoa, you're using a lot of that. She goes, oh, I put this shit on everything.
I have not seen that. I'll look it up. But
It's
again, one of the
awesome.
nice things about the internet is all you have to do is Google that and I'll get it,
That's
right?
it. Do the Google, it'll be there.
Yeah, I just said the Googleizer. It's the most powerful tool ever designed by mankind
I love it. I
is
agree with you.
Google,
That's right.
And of course now everybody's trying to go after them government wise. I'm like,
Oh,
why?
yeah, I know.
Like
I know.
they're number one because they're the best product, not because I'm not forced to use Google. There's other search engines, guys.
Yes, there are.
Yeah,
I agree. That's what happens when you're number one.
yeah, people go after you.
Always.
Yeah, no, it's the tall poppy syndrome from Australia kind of thing.
100%.
Unfortunately true. It's a human
Agreed.
thing.
Anything you'd like to share in closing, Brad? I've really enjoyed this conversation.
No, I've really enjoyed talking with you too. This is fun, and it's unfortunate that you view this as a temporary occupation.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, this is full on temporary. Yeah, when this is done, I'm done.
Yeah, no, it's because you're very good at it. So,
thank you.
No, I know I've enjoyed this a great deal. It's just fun to. Well, my daughter would call it complain about current situations, but
Yeah.
I call it talking or
talk about the facts.
Yeah. Well, that's I think in the months and quarters ahead, there's going to be some serious questions asked about the responses to this outbreak, and there aren't good answers for them. And so we're going to see a lot of political ducking and double speaking and sidestepping and all the rest of that. And and some jurisdictions have done pretty well with it too.
Yeah,
South Dakota,
Taiwan.
Yeah, Taiwan. I mean, we're so far ahead of the curve.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, after SARS, they said, okay, what happens if it happens again?
Yeah, let's get it sorted.
And they had all the shields made for the restaurants and the schools and and everything. And they had you actually get a quota of masks every week that you're just given by a pharmacy from day one. So
day one.
If you're a family of 4, you get 16 masks a week or whatever, and you just go and they give them to you. I mean, they were just ahead of it, and they've had no problem and no economic dislocation. It's been, I mean, virtually none. I mean, all their export stuff has gotten messed up, but domestically, nothing.
Right.
I mean, very admirable, and
I agree.
Didn't cost them anything to get ready for it.
Yeah.
Bit of foresight. So,
Agreed.
we'll be asking those questions as a society over the next year.
I agree. I look forward to Malcolm Gladwell's next book.
Ah, yes. Me too. I'm glad you said that because I love reading his stuff. It doesn't matter what he writes. I love reading it. It's like reading Conrad Black stuff. I don't have to like Conrad Black.
That's right.
His writing is he's amazing.
Whoa.
I hang on every word he writes. He's just.
Oh my gosh, I have to look up every word.
Yeah, well, he does a lot of that too. A little bit.
Oh
too
my
much of
gosh.
that, but I mean, he's so eloquent. He's
so eloquent.
He's such. But I mean, there's a half a dozen people like that out there that I mean, I don't care what they're writing about. I just read it because it's so on. And and not being a particularly proficient writer myself, I appreciate that other people can communicate that way.
I agree with you, Brad. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I've very much enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, well, me too as well. And hang in there for the next, few months, and then we can all start meeting in person again and do it the right way. So
I agree with you. And if there's anything that I or my friends can do for you in any way, let me know, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Brad. Thank
Okay.
you.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Brad Thompson. Oh my goodness. Check out all the good work that he's doing. Obviously for his friends and family first, but for all of us too. So lucky. Thanks again for joining us on Cat's Track, and we'll see you next time.